Welcome back, everybody. We have got one heck of a great packed show this week where we get into hurricane discussions, natural disasters, and things that none of us like to see happen. I don't think I have the right audio hooked up here. Let's just change that here to... How's that? That any better? You have sound now? All right, I think I got it fixed. Got two of you with no sound, waiting for someone to confirm you have sound now, please. I think that should have fixed it. I'm going to go back in and make sure that I got the right one. Let's see. There we go. NSB, thank you for confirming. All right. So let me start over since the first 4 minutes of that was total crap. Sorry about that. I try to turn the microphones on right at the last minute because sometimes the live stream goes so long that I get really close on the battery. And I've never actually had the battery run out, so I really don't know how long it can last, but I don't like taking a chance. So hopefully I'll never know. I just got to make sure I get it charged up. So I just wanted to let everybody know that there are two live streams. One is the vertical live stream. If you're on the vertical and you want the horizontal, you can switch. And if you're on the horizontal and you want the vertical, you can switch. The vertical basically is somewhere around right about here, up and down. And most of the conversation we have tonight will be just right up the middle here. So no big deal. We do have really good topic for the night. It is the top 10 hurricane prep mistakes that most solar people make. We're not going to talk about things you should do. Well, we probably will end up talking about things you should do. But the focus tonight is the 10 items that most people make the mistake, the most common mistakes that I see. And then, of course, I've got some questions following that have come in from you, the listeners, and you folks have sent me a lot of questions over the last couple of months in prep for hurricane season. So I pulled together a bunch of those, and we'll go through some of those tonight also. So I did want to, we'll go back to, I don't know if you got to hear anything that I was talking about with the bit miner. We are sitting at 98% and 97.9%. And the bit miner just started winding up for the night. I had just turned it on as I came online. As you can see, I flipped the switch. I flipped it a little early because normally it doesn't start until 8 o'clock, but it was at 98%. So I want to make sure I give it enough time to get that battery chewed down. As you can see here, we're at 47 kilowatt hours of battery power, so it is going to take all night to burn that battery off and to get rid of all that excessive power, which is wonderful. It's the first good sunny day I have seen in a very long time. And I say first good sunny day, it's not the first hot and humid day. As I'm sure that Donald here will attest, we have had plenty of hot and humid days and plenty of hot weather. It's just not a lot with good sun. Today we had some really good sun. I think I probably, let's see if we can get that. Okay, there's this. Let's see if we can see what that input look like. All PV. Yeah, so we had a nice peak today. It didn't even flinch until 1:30 or so. And so these are all the input here comes off of used panels that I've picked up and used to run the solar shed. Today we are looking at somewhere around the, wow, that is not right. Let's see. Oh, I see what's going on here. It's looking at the whole month. I don't want to do that. Let's just look at today. Today is June 8th. So today we have 37 kilowatt hours of power that came in really good, and we've only used 21 kilowatts, which will have been this morning before the sun came up as it was burning down yesterday's power. So as you can tell, we are going to have a long night of using of power for the solar shed. Unfortunately, it's still 92 degrees out there and the fans are still running. As you can see over here on the right hand side, I've got a Shelly device hooked up to those where it just turns them off and on, the same as I've got for the amp miner. The bit mining has been fantastic lately. I've been switching around between different ones, and yeah. Absolutely, max sun today. Yeah, it was there. We got some good stuff. It was some very, very good sun today. And we've got a lot of good talk about the top 10 hurricane prep items for mistakes solar systems make. So I'm gonna throw the chat up on the screen for you guys. If I remember how, I think it's this switch right here. There we go. I'm going to throw the chat up on the screen so I can keep an eye on it. And hopefully you guys can keep me straight. But I'm going to go ahead and get started. We've got a lot of content to cover, and I got a lot of questions from you guys also. And so I want to get to as much of that as possible. But that said, I am here to communicate two ways. So if you got questions, just feel free to push them out. Looks like we got a couple of regulars here already that have spoke up. So feel free that if you are there, I like to have this be a two-way conversation. But we're going to start with the top 10 prep mistakes solar owners make. I'm going to start with number 1. I did bring me a list today, so I won't forget anything, and so that I can try to stay on schedule. As we all know, that doesn't always work. But number 1, thinking solar panels mean I have backup power. And the fact is that just because you have solar panels doesn't mean you have power when the hurricane hits or when the power goes off. As a matter of fact, at the current state right now today, I checked this number last week, coincidentally, and 76% of all homes in the United States that have solar systems installed on their house have grid-tied solar panels with no battery. Meaning, if there is no battery, when the grid goes down, your power goes out, you have no solar. So just because you have solar panels does not mean you have backup. As a matter of fact, 3 out of 4 of you who have solar panels have no backup. And you have no power when it goes up. So the grid is the key there. A lot of these solar panels are tied to grid-tied systems, meaning that the power itself is converted from the DC panels with either microconverters at the solar panels or sent back to an inverter, and the inverter converts it to AC power, and then it's backfed into your panel for you to use, and what you don't use in turn goes back to the grid and causes your meter to run backwards or to causes a credit to be issued from your from your electric company. Now, there's goods and there's bads about that, and there's good parts of the country to be, and there's bad parts of the country to be. Great place to be for feeding power back to the electric company here in Florida. But that's beside the fact. The backup of solar panels doesn't mean anything if you don't have a way to store that power, because if the grid's not there, you can't feed it back to it, and if you can't feed it back to it, you can't get it from it, and if you can't get it from it, your lights go out and all of those panels shut down in order to prevent you from accidentally feeding something to someone working on the lines out there. So that is something very important to think about. Now, that said, there are some off-grid inverters that you can configure to work strictly on when solar panels are there and when they're connected and with no battery. I'm not saying that you can't operate without the grid. I'm saying that a majority of 76% of the households, based on statistics from, I don't even remember what year it was. It was recent. It was last year or the year before. So that is a huge percentage of people. Now, battery cells have gone up quite a bit, but that doesn't mean that that it changes anything. So that's number one. Number two feeds right into that. Number two problem and mistake that's made is no battery backup. So without batteries, even if you have solar, you have nowhere to store it. Electricity is like rain. It falls from the sky, but when it hits the ground, it's gone. If you don't use it on its way down, if you don't capture it and save it somehow, you have no way to reference it later. So solar power is exactly the same thing. Electricity is only there for that moment. You have to have a way to store it. That way we use to store it are batteries. Now, batteries have come a long way in the last 4 or 5 years with lithium iron phosphate, from lead acid, from all the different types of batteries that they've come out with. But the most efficient at this point today, lithium iron phosphate, is basically 99.9% or so. You put it in, you get it out. Now, used to be in a lead acid style thing, the faster you put that power in, the less you would get, less it would get stored, and and the faster you pulled it out, the less you would get out. With lithium iron phosphate, it's pretty close to what you put in is what you get out. There are some losses there, but very little. But that mistake is pretty bad. The panels make that power, the battery stores that power. So you're looking at basically the number two problem that most people run into is they just don't have any way to store it, or they don't have enough. If you look at my bit mining system, I have here stored, if you look at this top right hand corner here, 46 kilowatt hours. That's enough to run my house for at least a day or two during a hurricane, probably 3 or 4, because I would cut out all my non-essential items. But the important thing to remember there is that you have to have a just not grid-tied system, and B, you have to have a way to store that power, meaning batteries. And the more batteries you have, the more ways you have to store it, or the more places you have to store it. Okay, so let's move on to number 3. What is the third most common mistake that someone in the solar owners make? And that is no critical loads plan. Let me explain what I mean by critical loads. And the hardest thing to explain is to someone, what do you really need when a hurricane hits, and what would be a nice to have? And let me give you a very, very good example. And this is the one I always use because it's one of the most consuming things of power, but it's also one of the most nicest things to have. Let's talk about air conditioners. For many hundreds of years, humans lived on this earth with no air conditioner. Do you have to have an air conditioner to live after a hurricane? And the answer is usually, the core answer is no. The reality answer is somewhere between there and how much power do you actually have. So if you've got enough power and you've got enough solar panels and everything, then air conditioners definitely go on my list. I have a hard time sleeping at night if it's hot. So I like it cold in my bedroom. So so I make sure my backup systems are big enough to where I can run that air conditioner. But the fact is if you don't have that critical loads panel to shut those devices off, what most commonly happens to people is just like they say, oh, I've got a generator, and they turn that generator on and they run all their devices and the power's out for 2 days and they run out of gas and you run out of batteries and you're gone. You basically are in the same boat as everybody else because you don't have anything to run it on. So that is number 3, is no critical loads plan. It should be something, well, hopefully you won't get to test that in SB, but if you do, take this one very seriously. A critical loads plan means come up with an idea of whether it's actually put a panel in that all your critical loads go to that you can run, or learn which breakers you need to shut off and how to backfeed that power to your panel safely, or how you're going to hook these devices up to run them when the grid goes off, and test that plan. It's that time of year, and you're going to see me come out with a ton of videos over the next couple of weeks on testing that plan. The key thing here is to understand what your system can do and what it can't do. How long you can go without things and how long you can't go without things. You know what happens to me all the time is somebody will say, hey, I need a system for my RV. And I'll be like, great, what do you want to do? And they're like, look, I want to go boondocking. And I'm like, okay, how long do you want to go boondocking? And they're like, well, I want to spend 3 days in the boondocking. I'm like, oh, 3 days, that's great. Out in the wilderness for 3 days and you're going to go out hiking and fishing and that kind of stuff. Like, no, I just want to go out there and work. I want to turn on the air conditioners and I want to work, and pretend that I'm working and just use that as my life. And I'm like, okay, but you think you're going to do all this and you're going to either you're going to use all your air conditioning, or all of this stuff you can live without. You can live without coffee. You can live without, and everyone always thinks they can live without things. It never works out that way. My suggestion is try it. That means on your critical loads, set up your house to run that critical loads. Actually turn those items off that you say you can't live without. If you say you can't live without hot water for 2 days, try it. Go with hot water for 2 days and find out how it works. Now, this is not as easy to test as you would think. I know that I get a lot of hardship from my wife when I get into things like this. So usually I will test these things when she's not around, and I will test more of the how much can I run when she is around? In other words, can I run the hot water heater? Can I run the air conditioner? Can I run this? What do I need to do to be able to run the AC? What do I need to do to run the hot water heater? What do I need to do to run them both at the same time, and all that? So understanding what your real true critical loads are, and if you could really power them, and what your nice to haves are. Let's talk nice to haves. Hot water, air conditioner, two nice to haves that you think could be critical. And to be honest with you, hot water heater, if you turn it off, you're going to have hot water water for a couple of days anyway, as long as you're not on one of those on-demand hot water heaters. Hot water heater, the water will still be warm 24 hours later. It'll still be hot 12 hours later. So you could turn that on once every 2-3 days, take a quick shower, and wash your dishes and turn it off, and you would use a fraction of the energy that you would use if you had it on all the time. But these are the type of things that if you don't experiment with, you don't know. Another example, your oven. Your oven is probably one of the highest consumption items in your house, but it's not high consumption from the fact that, like Thanksgiving, when you put a turkey in and you cook on the oven on for 7, 8, 10 hours. It's high consumption in the fact that when you turn it on, it uses a ton of power all at one time. So being able to handle a dryer, an oven, a hot water heater, an air conditioner, those are all 4 extremely high usage devices that, given the right system, you can run them all, but you also need to make sure that you are set up to ration them if you need to. In other words, if you've got a nice solar system that you could run your whole house, chances are, unless it's a really big solar system, you're not going to be able to run your hot water heater, at 4,500 watts, your oven at another 3,000 watts, your air conditioner at, let's say, 2,000 or 3,000 watts, and your what was the other one? Whatever it was. Whatever that one was, you're not going to be able to run them all at the same time unless your system is built for that and you understand what that takes. So putting it into a critical loads panel would be the 3rd most common mistake that people that are running solar systems don't do. They're not prepared when the hurricane hits to say, these devices I have to have: lights, phone charger, internet router, Starlink, CPAP's machine, refrigerator, medicine, freezer, those type of things. And they won't want to isolate the difference between those and possibly your air conditioner, your hot water heater, your stove, your oven, the devices that take you a lot of power. Things like a water pump, believe it or not, some of these water pumps in certain parts of the country can be extremely high consumption. I'm very lucky here in Florida. I have city water and I have a well. My well pump is shallow well. So it, takes 2 amps at 120 volts, no big deal. But there are places where well pumps are 70, 80 amps, are bigger and stronger and more usage than an air conditioner. All right, got a couple of comments here. Let's go to those real quick. All right, so we have, well, where did I leave off? Mike's Garage. Hey, Mike, how you doing? Good to see you. Looking forward to next week. Hope you are too. All my 120 volt loads are on critical backup. My 240 loads, AC hot water heater, are connected to the EG4 6000 XP. As for AC, we move into the RV like a hurricane molten, and the EG4 can run the AC. Yes, Donald, that's a great plan, because and I even put mini splits in my RV, and with the mini split, I can run my AC 24/7 without too much trouble at all. The 6000 XP runs it really well. But no, that is a great plan. And the fact is that we all, watching Donald here, we all need to take something from that. It's the fact that he has a plan is what's really important here. And it sounds like he's probably tested that plan and done it and used it. And that is what's really critical here as we start to move into hurricane season. I know the second hurricane formed, both of them in the off California's coast, not off of ours. So happy Monday to you too. And let's see, Donald, sorry, the 120 volt loads are connected to the EG4. Oh yeah. Now that thing will handle a bunch. 240 are powered by the 12 kilowatt generator when needed. And that's a good backup plan too, Donald. A lot of the times that's what I'll suggest to people is that you use the batteries for for your common everyday thing, and you use your generator for nothing more than a charging device every couple of days if you don't have enough sun, and the plan can call for you to have a backup to the backup. That's really critical. And that way you've got minimized through your critical loads. You've minimized your usage to where it's the absolute minimum you need. But even then, things can go wrong, and you could, yeah, somebody's hurt and you need more hot water than normal, and you have to run your hot water heater more for whatever reason the case may be, or whatever. You end up having to cook more for neighbors, or whatever the case may be. Whatever you need that extra, whatever it happens, then having that backup plan and understanding those critical loads is super, super duper important. My well pump is 1.5 horsepower and is 328 feet deep, just installed an AC soft start. And so that's a pretty, in order to have a soft start, so that's 1.5 horsepower. How many amps is the startup on that one, Mike? I mean, in order to have a soft start, it's got to be pretty bad. I mean, I'm sitting here in Florida. Couldn't even tell you how deep mine is, but I know it's nothing. You can hand pump prime it, so I'm not too worried about it. Couple more feet, Mike. Mike, a couple more feet and you will hit China. Yeah. But the wells are really deep in some places, so you have to deal with that. All right. That was number 3, was no critical loads. And I can't stress how important that one is. So number 1 is, thinking that you have solar panels means that you've got power. That's not necessarily true. Only, 76% of the people with solar panels in the United States will not have power, even though they have solar panels. The second one is not having any battery backup. Without the batteries, you have no place to store the power that those panels generate. So you have to do that. The third one is the critical loads plan. Come up with a critical loads plan. Understand what the plan means, and understand that be realistic on what it actually means and how it works. All right. The fourth one is very, very super important, and a lot of people skip it, and that's why I put it as number 4 on the list, is no safe transfer switch or interlock. The transfer switch or interlock allows and prevents you from accidentally feeding back to the grid or feeding back to an incompatible grid-tied system on your roof that would in turn cause damage to you, your system, your wiring, your house, or alignment outside on the thing. Make sure that if you are hooking up an interlock, which is basically a switch on your in your breaker box that prevents both the backfeed breaker from being on and your main breaker from being on. And it's usually a piece of metal that slides between the two of them and lets only one of them come on at a time. That you understand what you're doing, how it works, and that you get it right. If you don't, it is super, super easy for an electrician to do that. They don't have to open the panel usually. They can do it right from the outside, and it's just a simple screw-on piece of metal that prevents both breakers from being on, unless they have to move the breakers around, but it is super duper important. The other one is a transfer switch, and a transfer switch will allow you to either manually turn off one and the other, meaning when it's up, it's on grid, when it's in the middle, it's off, when it's at the bottom, it's on your solar system. There's transfer switches like that, or there's transfer switches built into a lot of the inverters that will allow them to automatically switch into bypass or turn bypass off, or to switch to grid power, or to combine them if you've got a hybrid system or whatnot. But this is definitely number 4 on my list of no transfer switch or no way for an interlock to prevent that. This is something that's very, very critical. If you plug that in and you don't have that interlock on, you don't have those breakers on or something, and that grid comes back on, some really bad things are going to happen to your inverter, to your generator, to you, to your house, to a lot of things. So please make sure that you are not just connecting these and hoping for the best, that you truly understand how and what that transfer switch does, or the interlock and how they work. Mike says, my deep well pump is actually one of my smallest loads energy-wise. It pulls about 2,200 watts, but has 1,200 kilowatt inrush. Uses 8 kilowatts from all of May. Wow. Yeah, it sounds like you could use a 12,000 watt inrush, which is what, about 6 times its starting rate, which is probably not completely unreasonable for it to be about 6 times. I mean, I've seen them at 10 and 20 times their operating wattage, but 2,200 watts is pretty deep in your parts too. I mean, mine is literally, I think it's 2.2 amps, which means it's what, 280 watts running, which probably means it's less than 1,000, maybe 1,200, 2,000 watts starting. But I'm in Central Florida. The wells are, 3 feet down. So you're not talking about deep wells, you're talking about shallow. Mike, you got the right one here. Install a soft start on both. It'll both extend their lives and easier on the inverters. Yeah, absolutely, 100% right. I'll be coming out with a soft start video here soon for my air conditioner. It's one of the things I'm doing for my prep for the hurricane season, is making sure in all of the tests that I've ran, my air conditioner will start, but you see a little bit of flicker and stuff like that, and I don't like that. I don't want it to be hard on any of my devices, and it'll extend the life of my air conditioner. Donald says, I am lazy. I changed out my SVC panel with Olivian Smart Panel remote breaker trip. Also gives me current usage for each breaker. Yeah, those things are actually kind of cool. I put in one of those monitors and stuff, but it doesn't have all the breaker switching stuff that those things have. But they're just a lot more expensive. I don't know what it is. Those panels, and those are those white ones that they have that have all the little high-tech looking breakers and stuff. They don't look like they're mechanically as strong as all the panels. Tell me I'm wrong, because I love the way they look at stuff, but they don't. I love the how do I want to say this? I love the way they look on camera. I don't like the way they appear to be weak and fragile and not as rugged as the standard ones. Have it in Home Assistant, yeah. So it hooks up to Home Assistant. I got mine hooked up to Home Assistant too. I think I used a Refloss, and I've had a couple of different ones that I've hooked up there. 3 years, no problems. Well, that's good. That speaks good for it, doesn't it? All right. Let's move on to number 5. Number 5, too much on extension cords. So this is super common for people who are running, that are building a hurricane prep. They think they're going to run extension cords. They're going to have all kinds of boxes and things all over the place. To a certain extent, certain aspects of that do work. The problem is that extension cords are made for very temporary, very emergency cases. They are not made for long-term or real backup plans. Extension cords are, and if you talk to anyone who has a commercial establishment, you'll know that in a commercial establishment, they're almost outlaw extension cords, simply because they're not the safest thing in the world. Most extension cords are designed for small devices like chargers and little things. They're not made for large devices like refrigerators and hair dryers and operating your everyday household appliances off of them. Also, most extension cords, if you're going to do with extension cords, then you need to be very cautious about the extension cord that you buy. The breakers in your house are 15 amps standard. A lot of them are 20 amp standard, meaning they'll support almost practically anything you can plug into them at 20 amps, certainly, at 15 amps mostly. The problem is most extension cords are 12 and 13 amp extension cords, which means the extension cord melts before the breaker pops. And thus is the problem with a lot of extension cords using a lot of extension cords in emergency situations like this. You have a tendency to push them to their limit, and this causes a lot of fires. Past years, Christmas trees and that kind of thing. And that is because of the way that those things are not designed for that. Make sure if you are using extension cords in your backup plan that you get the 12 gauge or the 10 gauge extension cords that can support the 15 or the 20 amp cords. Yes, they are a lot more expensive, but it is a huge difference in what they can support. One of those little 13 amp extension cords, sure, if you want to run a light, then they're going to be just fine. But do not plug, heaters, dryers, kitchen utensils, microwaves, those type of things into them in any long-term situation, because you will end up with real problems. And this is one of the huge things that people, number 5 on my list, is they rely too much on extension cords. And the extension cords that they use are not high enough quality to support the loads that they've got put on them. And it's very easy to overdo it. And as I said, you have a 13 amp extension cord and you will plug something into it. You'll plug in a couple of extra devices. You won't realize you went over it. Your breaker will not pop until 15 amps or more. And you'll be sitting there at 15 amps thinking your breaker is going to save you, and it's not. That extension cord will melt and short out before the breaker pops. And it's just an unfortunate fact of life. I do not know why they insist on selling smaller extension cords than can be supported by the standard supported by a wall outlet. And it's been like that in the code for years, and I'm not sure how or why it's like that, but it is. So extension cords can work for small emergency loads, but they become messy. They risk fire. Long cords, undersized cords, and overload cords are a common problem. So that is number 5 on my list. Using them is and can be extremely dangerous. Please be very, very careful. Thank you, James. Yes. I think that's just the table for the 15 amps, right? And I think didn't they add this coming year in the 26 book? Are they not going to add one for lights for 10 amp for LEDs? I'm assuming you're an electrician or know something in order to be able to pull 310.16 out of your pocket. James, also, if you are installing a new panel, that GenReady panel is good. It is set up for Generac control wiring. I use GenReady with a portable generator, and I convert it with a kit for natural gas. Yes. My only problem with using generators for your backup as opposed to solar, is that there is a limit to the amount of fuel that you can get. Now, a lot of the times with, if you've got natural gas or something along those lines, or you've got a 100-gallon propane tank, then you can definitely do it. But I prefer solar simply, and then use the generator to charge the batteries only when things go bad from the solar. It allows me to pull the maximum out of the generator for that short period of time and not have all that damn noise and all that running clutter. If you pull that generator, and you can buy a smaller generator or even a noisier, cheaper generator, and you can get a decent amount. You'll see some test videos that I'll be going through here in the next couple of weeks on doing exactly that. I think I've got a generator on the way, and I'm going to do a comparison against small generators like a 2,000, 2,300 watt, a 4,000 watt, and then like a big 9,600 watt. We'll see what kind of efficiency we get out of them. One will be a, really super noisy one. One will be like the inverter generators and stuff, and see what we can get. We'll kind of get some ideas of what it is. But every year, what I try to do is to measure the amount of energy I can get out of fuel so that I know how much fuel I need to have in backup. And I'm sure that'll be a point on my thing here. Yes, I'm assuming that yes means that you're an electrician. And did you know, does the 2026 book have a 10 amp? I think it has. I think they were saying, at least I read somewhere, that they were adding a 10 amp circuit for lights that did not have any branch circuits on it. Maybe I'm dreaming, but I think I remember that. All right. All that was prior to me installing solar with a 16 kilowatt battery. Costco tests their generators for sine wave quality. Yes, they do, but a lot of the times testing them and actually having them meet the standards they claim are two different things, especially if you're testing them under load and on a house that has things coming off and going on and coming off and going on. That sine wave can be very deceptive, and it can have very ugly, nasty bumps and noise in it. Whereas usually if you're just sucking it in and pushing it into a battery, you can get it to clean up and run it pretty consistent. A lot of those cheaper non-inverter generators, they base everything on the rotation speed. And when that rotation speed is very consistent, then the generator can produce a fairly clean sine wave. The problem is when you have loads coming off and on causing that motor issues, that can create some dirtiness. And then even on the sine wave ones, on the inverter generators, a lot of the times those loads changing causes some surges there, and you can end up with some dirtiness there too. So it's not always what it appears to be. Unless you put the oscilloscope on it and you see it yourself, you can put some faith in it, but I wouldn't trust it I wouldn't entrust it with my critical items, especially during a hurricane. You can easily burn out a lot of equipment with a bad sine wave, especially refrigerators and stuff like that. It's extremely hard on them. Haven't seen it in the field. The 10 amp, is that what we're talking about? Yeah. I think it called for the variation of it that I saw was it was a 10 amp fuse, but it had the same 14 gauge wire. It was 10 amp breaker, I'm sorry. A 10 amp breaker, but it had the same 14 gauge wire as the 15 amp. It just allowed you to put the smaller breaker in. I'm pretty sure it still required the 14 gauge wire though. Yes, okay. Well, that'll be interesting to see where that leads to, because that's going to be, as soon as they put them out on the public, there'll be people putting them in where they don't belong. Okay. Moving on. I feel like I'm rushing through this, but it's already been 40 minutes. And I got a lot of questions to follow this too, so we'll get to those also. Let's move on to number 6. No testing system before a storm. Can I say this? I cannot stress this one enough. If you have a system that you think you're going to use when the storm comes, you may have nothing. And I don't mean this to be disrespectful, but it is extremely difficult to look at a label and determine what it's going to do in real life. And the two are completely different. If a generator says it can produce 2,000 watts, the question is, can it? Do you know it can? If it can it also start the items? If 2 of the items start at one time, does the generator shut off? Does it cut off and on? I'll give you a perfect example of something that had nothing to do with electricity, short of a real big pain in the butt happened to me in the hurricane back 2 years ago. I had gotten a new refrigerator. I had tested my system multiple times before this and never really had any trouble. But when I got a new refrigerator, I did not plug it into the actual plug that it was going to use during the hurricane. And when the hurricane came, that knocked the power out. That damn GFI plug was reset over and over and over and over and over. It drives me crazy because it would randomly go off at any time. Probably something simple and stupid in the refrigerator, a ground that isn't connected correctly, that needs to be fixed. But the fact is, the hurricane's here. You're running around trying to figure out where you're going to get gas, if you're going to have power for the next 2 days, if you're going, if your neighbors are going to realize that your lights are on or hear your generator and come over after 3 or 4 days when they're all out. You're worried about all of these problems, and you got this damn refrigerator that keeps popping your GFI plug and everything connected to it goes off. Would have a test fixed that? Yes, a test would have fixed that. It ended up being a stupid ground wire wasn't snug inside the refrigerator. Dumb. But that's not the kind of thing you want to be tracking down in the middle of a hurricane or any natural disaster, whether it's a flood, tornadoes, a hurricane, snowstorm, doesn't matter. When you need it to run and you need it to not pop, you need it to run. Oh, is it really 16? Well, it would be 16 in the regular NEC, what was that, 310/16 that you pointed out earlier? I wonder if they're going to allow it to go down to 16 gauge too. That would be, I don't know. Yeah, I'm one of those people. I'm not sure that sounds like a good idea. I just don't know that the savings are worth the risk. But what am I to say? Yes, the NEC is approved 10 amp breaker in a few years ago. But it's in the 2026 NEC code book, from what I've heard. But whenever implementation in whatever area you are takes that. I know in Florida, it'll take place at the beginning of next year if it was in the 2026. How I would not run a fridge on a ground fault outlet for those reasons. Well, the simple fact is, Donald, if your ground fault is going off on a fridge, there's something wrong. And you should fix it without that. I understand GFI can be a pain in the butt, problematic, probably not the ideal situation, but the fact is that a lot of the times your inverters have it built in. In this case, I had one of those giant 50 amp stations running from my inverter into it, and all the plugs were GFI. And so the only way I could run it non-GFI was run it directly back on a full 100-foot extension cord to the generator, which is what I ended up doing. But if I hadn't had a 100-foot extension cord that I could use. All right. All right, so where was I? So we talked about, oh yeah, so testing your system before a storm. It's a very realistic thing to do. Turn everything on the way you would run it during a storm. Make sure that it runs the way you think it's going to run. Make sure that you have, even if you don't run the full test, make sure that it's actually going to perform the way you think it's going to perform, even if that's for a couple of hours, and check it and make sure it does. A lot of people don't take into a consideration all the elements of this and all the moving parts, the surges, the idle consumptions, and they think they have a system, a battery, a simple inverter with a 35 watt idle consumption over a period of a day can, go through a kilowatt and 1.6 kilowatts or so. I mean, we can burn a lot of power by doing nothing. And so testing it really, really makes a difference. And testing it, especially if you're going to be using things like extension cords and stuff, all those numbers change. All the math that you did to make sure that they were going to work may not work in a scenario where you have all this goofy connections and all that. So If the GFI is tripping and leaking current around the ground, some reason it is a bad outlet. Or correct. No, absolutely. That is much as problematic as bad GFIs can be. And I am one of those people who used to hate to hook things up to GFI simply because it always seemed like it was popping on me. But what I've learned is that if the GFI is popping, there's something wrong. It's not a pain in the butt. It's not an issue of, well, this isn't convenient, so let's change it. There's something wrong. Whether that is something's got a minor short, or bad ground, it's leaking power somewhere. It's very, very simple with GFI. Imagine this, you have power leave here, and you got power come back here. Every bit of power that leaves from here has to come back. And when you don't have everything come home, it's like children. If you got 6 kids and 6 kids go out to go party and only 5 come home, something's wrong. You need to go figure out where that 6th kid is. And the same thing's true with electricity. If you have 1,000 watts go out, you need 1,000 watts of used watts to come back. And when it don't, that GFI can trip. That can be the difference of someone's got a short in their sink and it's going to electrocute you. It could be that the refrigerator's got a ground fault and it's bleeding power out somewhere. It could be anything, but it shouldn't be happening. And now, if I remember correctly, I don't know if who was that was telling me? One of the other code changes that I saw recently, and keep in mind, I read this and I'm taking this off the top of my head, so it might not be completely accurate. But if I remember reading it correctly, all major appliances now, air dryers, washing machines, it looks like they're changing it to where all those plugs have to be GFI also. And that would mean that your EVs, chargers, all of them, if those all become that would eliminate this stupid thing of everyone's gone to that dumb rental house. And I don't know if y'all ever stay at rental houses, but we travel a lot of conventions and stuff. And you go into these rental houses and the ovens or the refrigerators or something have that little tingly feel on them, or any device like that has a little tingly feel on. Immediately you know there's something wrong with the ground. Those GFIs would solve that, would force those people to fix them because they would no longer operate. It would pop the GFI instantly. The oven would refuse to start, and it wouldn't have a chance of causing anybody harm in the future. So I used to be one of those people who thought they were a pain in the butt too, but it just has changed in my mind. If there's a GFI plug that keeps popping, fix it. Find it, fix it. There's got to be something wrong. Depends on how old the kid is. Yeah, ain't that the truth? I only have one, so and I'm not sure if he didn't come back. It may just be that he didn't want to come home. But it was a good explanation. It is a good way of looking at it. Depends on. That's pretty funny. All right. Oh, I got sidetracked on GFI. I got my thing up. Let's see. Let's move on to. So that was number 6. So number 6 was not testing the system. Number 5 was relaying too much on extension cords. Number 4 is no safe transfer switch or interlock. Number 3 is no critical loads plan. Number 2 was no battery backup. Number 1 was thinking solar panels means you have backup power when actually 76% of the people in the United States that have a solar system have no power when the grid goes out because they're grid tied only. All right, let's move on to number 7, and this one is probably the most common one that I've seen ever, and it is no generator fuel plan. I can't even tell you. I do a gun show here in Florida every month, and I teach people how to get involved in DIY solar. And one of the most common things I hear from people is, oh, I don't need anything with solar. I have a generator. And I'm like, great, were you here 2 years ago? And they're like, oh yeah. And I'm like, well, what did you do when the power went out for 2 days? Oh, well, if it goes out for more than a day, then I'm kind of screwed. And I'm like, yes, that's my point. The point is, if you are running everything off of a generator, first of all, there is only so much fuel, and all of the fuel rush to get out of town just happened. None of those gas stations are open. The employees that work there are at home trying to protect themselves, and you are not going to get fuel. You will be just like my neighborhood. 2.5 days after that hurricane starts, every generator in the neighborhood will start going quiet because they run out of gas. Because at first you're thinking, oh, I've got plenty of fuel, everything's fine. And then after a day, you've burned through half of your fuel. And then you're like, well, it'll come back on before the next day. And then by the end of the second day, you've burned through all of your fuel and all you've got left is in the tank. And then you're like, well, what's in the tank will last. And then when your generator runs out completely, you're completely left in the rain. Generator fuel plan is number one. I do this. I think it maybe because I got stuck once. I got caught 10 days, and I was very lucky that I had bought a whole bunch of fuel for a show that I was going to. My wife has a coffee trailer we open up in a lot of fairs and stuff, and I had just stocked the coffee trailer's freezer with 300 pounds of ice. I'd gone to our store and I'd bagged up all the ice, and then I took it all and packed the freezer full, and I'd parked the trailer in the backyard, and then I'd gone to the gas station over the last week a couple of times and filled up tanks. So we have these 5-gallon gas tanks, and I had filled up and had about 35 or 40 gallons of fuel. And I got very, very lucky that I had filled up the fuel, and then they announced the hurricane was coming and everyone went out of Florida. Now, I don't know about where you live. Where I live, I'm right off of 95, and when they announce a hurricane evacuate, everybody and their dog coming from south of here, from all the way from Miami all the way up north, goes right up 95, pulls off these exits and sucks every gas pump dry, and nobody's getting in to get fuel here because they're all leaving town. So not having a fuel plan for your generator and understanding some of the things that are really key problematic for it can really haunt you. Let's talk about the first one. One, not having enough fuel. 5 gallons is not enough. If you're looking at how much does 5 gallons do, I know that if I put 5 gallons in a gas tank and I'm running my Predator 9500 inverter generator, that the best I'm going to pull out is about 30 kilowatt hours of power. That means I've got one good battery charge, or 2/3 of a battery charge as its current size, to get to restore myself. That means if I want to be able to charge my battery a couple of times, then I'm going to need a 5-gallon tank for 2/3 every time. And that means that I'm going to need, 1.5 tanks for every time I want to charge that battery. And if I want to charge it 3 times, then there is no way around the fact that I need 4.5 5-gallon jugs of gas to start it off, or I don't have that ability. That's what you need to be able to answer. In order to know that plan, you need to know how much gas you're going to need to be able to extend yourself. I use gas in generators to extend my battery life. In other words, I'll use all the solar that's available. And then if it's not available, usually after a hurricane blows through, the sky opens up and it's beautiful and you get all this beautiful sun. It makes it really easy to live off of solar. But there are times when that's not the only problem you have. You can have times when you lose panels. You can have times when you can't get into the yard. You can have times when so on and so on and so on and so on. So you need to have an alternative plan. So no, generators are great, but they need fuel, they need propane, they need natural gas, and they need enough to be a real backup plan. And if you're using them to supplement solar, which is my suggestion, all the better, but make sure that your supplement is large enough to do it. Now, gas also has a really ugly shelf life. And that means that each year when the hurricane season starts, like it did on the first of the month, I go out and I fill up all my gas cans now. And each year at the end of the season, which is around November, December, I take all of that gas and dump it in my wife's car. And that's because next year, that gas may or it may not be any good. And it may not be good enough to run that engine, or it may clog that engine or whatnot, but it's certainly good this year, and it's certainly good in my wife's car, or has been the last couple of years doing it that way. So that kind of a plan is super important. Let's see, where are we at? You guys just chatting along. I'm going to let you chat. All right. And so having that generator, not having to run it all the time, just using it as a backup plan for your solar, that's a great thing. But not having a fuel plan is what I'm telling you is really super common here. Everyone thinks that just because they have a generator is going to run forever. And if generator is your only plan, I'm telling you, you don't have enough gas. There isn't enough to run that generator. If you've got one of those 200-pound propane tanks in the back of your yard buried, then you might be okay. If you've got natural gas, you're probably even better shape than that. But make sure that you have some kind of plan. All right, so let's go see who else we got going on in here. There you go, Donald. We're all subscribers of Mike's Garage. He's got some cool content. He's been busy lately too. Charging battery 100% by night. Do you like the Predator? Let's see, who are we talking to? Are you talking to me? Okay, so the Predator that I have, I've got the 8750 non-inverter kind, and I've got the 9500 inverter kind. Both of them, the original one, the 8750, I bought for hurricane backup only when I first moved here and didn't really know, what I was doing, what I was buying. I just knew I needed a generator. Now, as it turns out, it's the better option for charging my solar system in a hurricane, because I can just turn up the charge inverter full steam and just pump it straight into there. It's noisy as all get out, but at that speed, I can get a maximum efficiency, and it's really super good. The inverter generator, I like it, but I use it for a completely different purpose. I use it for my food trailer, but it did save me in one hurricane, and it ran for 3 days, and the idle consumption's pretty low at about 25%. And then only would amp up when it needed it. It allowed me to keep things on, like the air conditioner in the evenings, my refrigerator that kept popping the GFI plug, and things like that. Now, I ran it through a big 50 amp RV plug from the backyard into one of those giant power stations that split the 50 amp into a bunch of 110 outlets, and I dropped that down in the middle of the house and plugged the refrigerator into it, and plugged everything else that needed to run off of that into that. So for me, I haven't had any problems with them. I do not have the tri-fuel one. I have a small Champion 2600 watt or 2100 watt that is bi-fuel, not tri. It does propane and it does gas, and the propane is a nice thing. It is one of those that I'm going to try here on a video shortly to determine how much can I use it as a backup, as a slow charge of 2000 watts over what period of time, and how much would a propane tank get me from fuel there. So but other than that, no, I don't have the food trailer I probably have about 200 hours on the food trailer one. The other one probably doesn't have 60 hours on it, and all of it is hurricane prep testing, making sure that it runs. I burn off a tank of fuel every year, and then I fill it back up with fresh oil, fresh things. And while I'm burning it off, I use that to figure out how much. Actually, I burn off two now that I think about it. One, I burn off to get rid of the fuel that's in there, and then the second one I burn off to gauge how much power would I get out of a tank, a 5-gallon jug. So natural gas has issues. Pumping station runs on air conditioner. Pumping stations run on AC. Oh. There you go. All right. You guys keep talking amongst yourself. I'm going to move on. All right. So let's talk about number 8. Number 8 is a double whammy in my mind, and I only know this from experience. It's the perfect temperature now. The coffee. Wish I could buy everybody a cup of coffee. Number 8 is forgetting internet and communications. Powering the fridge is great, but you also need internet, phone charging, radios, cameras, weather updates, communications, and power, blah, 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 blah. That's all my notes. The one thing that I learned about internet is the cable companies and stuff and a power outage are good for a couple of days, keeping in mind that all of their routers and relay stations and everything, and even from the phone company people, and I don't know who it was that was, maybe it was one of you that was on here, but someone was on a live stream at one point and told me that the phone company's backup is 2 days also. Meaning the power goes out, and this I know firsthand, when the power goes out from a hurricane or something like that, the grid cuts off all of the devices. Now, most of the routers for, let's say, you know, whether it's Spectrum or Time Warner or whoever it is, or AT&T or whatever, all of their routing equipment is all battery backed up, so it will stay on. The problem is all of them are based on how long the battery system that they have will keep them running, which I happen to know is just around 2 to 3 days. When we lost power for 10 days, by day 3, there was nothing phone-wise, cable-wise that was functioning at all. Your phone couldn't get a signal because none of the cell towers were up anymore because all the batteries had gone dead. The cable company, the cable modem was running because I had a generator and it was operating. It was an inverter generator, so I was perfectly good to run it. And for the first 2 days, it worked perfectly. But then after that, their batteries died, their routers went out, and they no longer worked anymore. So I lost that. So my plan for that is I now have my Starlink that I use in my RV when I'm traveling, when I'm working from my RV. I work from home, so all of my internet when I'm at home is on my high-speed internet. When I'm traveling, it's on my Starlink. I use it for a couple of years while I was traveling every day. And now it becomes my backup plan for when the crap hits the fan. I use Starlink for internet. Now, in a normal circumstances, you're still going to need to keep your phones charged. You're still going to need to keep, your cable modem on. You're still going to need to keep all of those devices operating even during those first couple of days, because it's possible that they've updated their stations to last longer, or they've added solar to their stations to last longer, or that they've got power and you don't. And so you're still going to want to make sure that that works. Oh, so see, you even lost natural gas. That stinks. But it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, you're going to lose gas, especially if we're talking about natural disasters. Hurricanes aren't the only ones. You're going to have earthquakes. You're going to have floods. You're going to have all of that. And a funny thing happened Donald, I don't know if you heard of this, but we had an actual earthquake here. It was actually in Cuba or off the coast of Cuba, and it was felt here in Florida earlier today, I think it was, or was it yesterday? I think it was earlier today. Um, I I remember hearing it, thinking it was just something launching from NASA, and that I missed the launch time. But it ended up being it was a rumble from a hurricane or from an earthquake. Um, I can't see people getting very nervous when the cell towers run out of power and assume that it's always be there, even when the power outages. Yeah, and they do. They get very nervous, and they don't understand that a lot of those towers, the redundancy of them is getting better, but they do have, and the same thing's true with the gas pumps at gas stations. Those also run on power, and without electricity, without their backup systems, they can't pump gas either. So even if you can get to a gas station to run your inverter or your generator, a lot of times you can't get the gas from them because that stuff is down in the ground and it's got to be pumped up and out. And I think a lot of them have backup also. Um, yeah, and the cell and it does. It's kind of eerie because not only was it where I couldn't make a phone call, because a lot of times you'll get, the network will get really busy in a time like that, and you can make a phone call and stuff like that. And you can't make a phone call because there's so many other people using the network and stuff. But it got really eerie when all of your text messages went down. Your phone was dead. It just, the little SOS symbol was the only thing it showed up on it, kind of like it had no SIM card whatsoever, and nothing was working. And that was kind of a little eerie. Now, it was kind of a break from technology. I mean, we spent 7 days and living off of generators and a prayer, but it does happen. Um, I worked for the phone company up north, and it was in the power department. We had large generator with backup fuel supply of 2 weeks. Cell towers only have small amount of fuel. And it never even dawned on me. You say small amount of fuel there. I'm assuming that these guys would be going to, small panels and stuff like that and getting away from having generators. But it makes you wonder, did they have an actual test process for these to make sure that those generators came on and worked? And I'm assuming that when a hurricane hits, everyone starts to use their phone. There's more data, there's more phone calls, there's more network traffic, which means more energy, meaning it doesn't last as long as they probably planned it to last anyway. It's a thing. I'm not sure what that one. Oh yes, you're talking about. Yeah, it was down by Cuba though, as far as I understand. Was it last night? I was thinking it was today. Maybe it was last night. I'm assuming you're talking about the earthquake. That's the reason why I have gas and propane set aside. The more options, the better. Yeah, now the nice thing about gas and propane, gas is one thing, it ages, but the propane don't. That's the really nice thing. You can keep that around for quite a while. It doesn't age near as bad. Diesel, I hear, also ages a lot better. It can last a couple of seasons as opposed to the one season that you can keep gas. And I guess with gas treatment, you could probably get away with more than one season, but it starts to turn a funky color. And then you got to start cleaning carburetors every year and all that gobbledygook. So I don't mess with it. I burn it all off every year and start over. All right. Let's move on to number 9. This one, this one, and I'm sure this one has hit somebody, but it's kind of a hard one to accept. It's one of those like the phone company, the phones going out that you just wouldn't expect it to happen. So no spare parts, fuses, breakers, or cables. It is hard to believe that a simple MC4 connector can cause your entire system to break, or A $10 fuse can go out and you not have a backup fuse. Or, and I know a lot of people with T-class fuses, and they think they're all hot to trot. They got the T-class fuse, and if I've been at one RV park with a solar system with somebody's T-class fuse has gone out and they were out looking for a T-class fuse, I've been to 100. I always keep, a couple of them around, because you never know when you're going to put one in and you're going to be somewhere on some beach somewhere. You'll pop a fuse, and then you'll put another one in thinking, well, it must have been a fluke, and boom, you'll pop a second one, and now you're still stuck and you had a backup. So I always keep a few of them down, but keeping some spare fuses. I even had a breaker in an RV go out one, which a lot of those it was the standard breakers that you use in a home. And fortunately, I had just wired a panel in and had a couple of extras sitting around, was able to get one of those fixed. MC4 connections, battery cables, lugs, all of that. When the hurricane hits, these are the kind of things that you don't think about. We all turn so easily to Amazon to bring us these things the next day and don't think about the fact that when all that's gone, what are you going to need to get by? You got to think of those pieces, those fuses and those connectors, the same way you think of water and food when the hurricane hits. Where are you going to get your water and food from? Where are you going to get a replacement fuse? How are you going to make it through the next couple of days? But that is really, really common for those fuses to be an issue. Yes, I had a monthly test, found an issue with one of our central offices where I let the generator run past 15-minute test time, and at around 25 minutes, the generator stopped and the fuel line was too small. Oops. It's kind of funny, isn't it? It's like one of those things that it's like you say the best things you can do is prepare for it and then try it, make sure it works. And here you got the phone company installing backup generators and the fuel line's too small. I'm sorry, I don't know why I find that funny, but I do. I've seen large liquid-filled batteries with diesel generators at cell towers. 6.1 earthquake today at 2 p.m. off the west coast of Cuba. Okay, there it is. Thanks, Donald. Thanks for hunting that down for me. Yeah, so there was a lot of reports of people. My wife was telling me that she was seeing reports on Facebook of people saying they'd felt it. And I'm like, no, the only thing I felt today was that stupid rumble from that takeoff of that rocket. And it turns out there wasn't a rocket launching. It was a rumble of an earthquake. All right, so that was number 9. Number 10, and then we'll get on with some of the questions that I've gotten from you guys, which I think those were as good as the last top 10 here. This one is probably what a lot of people are guilty of, and that is just waiting until it's too damn late. The worst time to build your backup system is after the hurricane, after the flood, after the earthquake, after the snowstorm, after the power's out, after the grid's gone, after the tornado, after whatever it is that hits. By the time you get there, it's too late. Thinking you have a system and actually having a system is the difference between having power and comfortably making it through a scenario like that and being in a nightmare. And trust me, I've been there. I've lived through one, and I will never. Matter of fact, the reason I am here today is because of that hurricane. The reason I do this show, the reason I insist on showing people and teach people and show them how to build systems and get them involved in DIY and show them how to get a home system that actually works in the right situations and that they truly understand it. The reason I do it is because I lost power for 10 days, and the only reason that I wasn't miserable is that I had gotten lucky and had 300 pounds of ice I was able to use for refrigeration and a generator that I used for a food truck that I was able to keep that I had 40 gallons of gas for. That was the only reason. So That is why I do it. That fuel line was an engineering embarrassment. Yeah, I can imagine. That is classic. It truly is. It's one of those things where the simplest things in life are the ones that bite you in the butt. So, all right. So let's see if we can go on to some of these questions. Unless, of course, Donald, you got more good stories like that, then I will stop the show and listen to that for sure. We had a tsunami in Dunedin with 4-inch surge at the beach. So many shop at Home Depots from before the storm starts, and they find out generators are sold out. Absolutely. And that is exactly what, and people find out that the generators that a lot of these places are selling, don't do you any damn good unless you got a place to store all the gas you're going to need to run it. They think, oh, I got a tank of gas and a generator, and then they turn it on and they got this big generator that's burning all this gas, and they're using a couple 100 watts for 6 or 8 hours while they're burning, 10 gallons. It's just it's just a thing. All right. Let's move on to a couple of questions I received and have seen more than once, most of them. In a hurricane knocks out my power, how many days should I actually plan for? This is probably one of the most common questions that gets asked. And this needs to be answered in two phases. One, I like to look for on a normal solar system to have, I seem to find that the normal way of getting around power outages and stuff is about 2.5 to 3 days. So let's call it 3 days of autonomy is the actual word for it. Autonomy means to be able to operate without the assistance of sun or grid or any other input. Now, having the sun with solar panels can extend that enormously, because even if it's cloudy and you're only getting 20%, 20% over a period of 3 days can be another, 60% of a day, can get you through almost a whole nother day. So your 3 days of autonomy turns into 3.6 days, even in the worst of scenarios. But that's where the most of the time you can recover. And then I like to have a second piece of this is how long do you want it to operate? And let me bring that back up real quick. How many days should I actually plan for? So that's the key is 3 days of autonomy on that system. But I like to have the ability to charge my batteries completely and totally another 3 full times. So that gives me 9 days with charging with generator and 3 days of operating independently. Now the two together, even with no sun, worst case scenario, let's say a hurricane comes and picks all my panels up and flies away with them, and all I have is my generator, my gas, and my inverter, then and my batteries, of course, then I should be able to operate for 12 days. I'm assuming that I would be safe to come out of this after 12 days and at least would have gas stations open after that point, or some way to get back to some kind of civilization at that point. That's me. Most people would be safe with around 7, which means if you could charge your batteries twice and you could have 3 days of autonomy, you would probably be safe there. But it's going to be what you're comfortable with, where you feel that comfort level. But I can tell you that it is quite common for people to come up short on this and think, oh, 1 or 2 days is going to be fine. The first day or two are the easiest. Those are the days that you can go without things. You think you can get away with it. It gets old really fast. And it is completely different on day 1 where you're going in and you're saying, well, I shouldn't open the refrigerator, but I'm going to do it anyway and grab a Coke. And day 3, where if you open that refrigerator tomorrow, you're not eating frozen meat anymore because you're not going to have frozen meat. It really changes things. So please take that into consideration. And even if you have to go back to problem number 3, which was no critical loads plan, and you need to go back and revisit that plan and figure out, okay, I've got 3 days of pure autonomy of running everything, but if I trim back down to X, I can turn my 3rd day into 2 days, or I can turn my second and third day into 6 days, that would even be better. Coming up with the plan ahead of schedule is the key here. Understanding what it is really the key. So let's move on to the next question. The next one was, what are the most important things in my house that I need to keep power during a power outage? Obviously, your refrigerator's key. If you have any medical devices that are critical to you, your CPAPs machines, your medicine cabinets. A lot of people have medicine cabinets for special medicines that can't not be cold or refrigerated or whatnot. I've got, for example, I've got some diabetes medicine, but even if I didn't have it, would it be a difference in life or death? No, it probably wouldn't. But at the same time, there are people that it would be. So that would be very, very critical that you do that. What are the other items? You need kind of basic lights. You're going to need some basic ways to charge your phones and stuff like that. This is where sitting down and thinking about it from a critical loads panel. Take your breaker panels and say, okay, look, what of these items do I have to have, and which of the items can I live without? Can I live without the air conditioner? Yeah, probably. Can I live without the refrigerator? No, I probably can't. Can I live without the freezer that's in the garage? Well, what's in the freezer in the garage? You know, if it's frozen food that you're going to need because you can't get to a grocery store, then no, you can't live without the frozen food in the garage. So you need that freezer. If it's a dehumidifier, can I live without? Well, of course you can live without a dehumidifier. So these are the type of questions that you have to ask yourself. You can turn off things like ovens, stoves, hot water heater. As I said before, hot water heater, you can turn a hot water heater on, get hot water. You know, if you got a 40, 50 gallon hot water heater, 4 or 5 people can take a quick shower and leave the hot water heater off for the next couple of days. You don't have to have it all of the time. If you're cooking, come up with an alternative plan. Have a barbecue grill and always keep a tank of propane fuel. Then you can cook on the barbecue grill as opposed to using your stove. It's a way to extend it. Do you have to extend it that way if your solar system supports it and you have enough sun? No. But if you have a backup plan to do it that way, if all hell breaks loose, that's where it's going to be really important for you. All right. Next one is, how long will my refrigerator stay cold before the food starts to go bad? And this is up to you. How often do you open it? A deep freeze will go for 24, 48 hours. If you don't open it, it will not have any problems. I've got ice cream in my food trailer that I've left overnight, and the generator or whatever power was at that stupid fair was shut down that I didn't know about. It went for about 16 hours before I got back. Power had been out the whole time, but because it was a deep freeze and nobody opened it and it didn't have any exposure, it was fine. So most deep freezes, especially if you have a lot of content in them, the more that's in there, the better. So for example, I told you I had that deep freeze that had 300 pounds of ice. That damn thing could have set for days and it wouldn't have had any problems because it had all that ice to help keep it cold. And it would have very, very slowly warmed up. Also keep in mind that a lot of deep freezes are sub-freezing, meaning that ice that you get out of your refrigerator and you put a little soda over it and it just kind of makes the soda cold. But if you take a deep freeze ice and you dump your soda in it, you'll notice that the soda will freeze around the ice, chilling the ice out. If you take a bag of ice from a deep freeze and dump it into a cooler with other ice where some of the ice is melted, it will actually freeze the ice at the bottom of the cooler back to ice from water, because the ice that you're pulling out may be negative 30 degrees. And even though the water warms it up 10 degrees, it warms up to negative 20 degrees, or it warms it up to 0 degrees. That's still freezing. So the ice at the bottom still freezes again. So sub-zero type things like that can last a lot longer. The refrigerator itself, you open that door, you close that door once, and you've kissed away hours of it being closed. So the key thing is when the power goes out, you absolutely do not open that refrigerator unless you absolutely have to. You never ever open it. And when you do, try to do everything at once. That means if you're going to make dinner, get your soda, get your friend, get your lollipop for your kids or whatever it is, do it all at once and close it and leave it closed. It is really, really critical. Okay. How do I keep freezer from thawing out if thawing out everything I have in there? You make sure you have a solar system to keep it running and you keep the door closed. It's the only way. The freezer itself, keep the door closed. If it's a deep freeze, you've got a lot longer than you think you have. You can run a deep freeze for about an hour a day. If you don't open it, you can run a deep freeze about 1 hour a day, and it can be shut off the rest of the time, not even have power, and pretty much will be fine. It'll last like that for quite a while. They're very, very efficient. How often should I actually test a generator or battery system so that it works when I need it? Okay, this one it's a little bit of an opinion here and a little bit of the fact here. First of all, you should always at least test your generator every year. I burn off all the old gas every year, put in fresh gas and burn off a tank of fresh gas to estimate how much I'm going to get from it and to make sure the generator works and to make sure all my fuel tanks are full and everything is good. I check it every single year. I also pull it out on the off year and start it, make sure that it runs and make sure that everything is good. And I burn off the tank that's there and put in fresh tank. Just the fuel that's in there I do in the off season just to make sure that it stays fresh and it doesn't get old and nothing gets cruddy and that the carburetor doesn't get dirty and that by the time I get to the beginning of the next season, I'm not going to walk into a broken generator. Okay. The battery system, on the other hand, I look at it completely different. The battery system, in my mind, shouldn't be exclusively for if you have a earth-shattering event that's going to, cause you all kinds of hardship. I use mine every day. I use it every day to run a bit miner, or I use it every day to run my house, or I use it every day to do this or every day to do that because I want to make sure that it's running. Supplement with figure out what your panel is, as we talked about it in option number 3, your critical loads panel, and run your critical loads every day off of your battery. That'll keep your battery running. That'll make sure your panels work. It'll make sure everything's functioning and operating. It'll give you a little bit of a break on your bill. And then when things do go wrong, you'll know that system, what it's capable of performing and how well it's going to perform and make sure that it can do everything you want it to do. And you'll be surprised how well it will work then. And as I said to a customer, I think it was last week or the week before, if you never run your system all the way down to the ground to know how far it can go, how are you going to know when you're going to run out of power in a hurricane? And, he kept telling me, well, I ran it down to 20% and it was still working. I said, great, run it down all the way. Okay, well, I ran it down to 15% and it was still working. And, 3 weeks later, well, I ran it down to 8%. I said, well, when did it shut off? He says, well, it hasn't ever shut off. And I said, well, at least you know now that you didn't know before, is that now you can run it all the way down to 8%. But the fact is, if you never actually try it, you don't know when that's going to go bad. You don't know that you're going to have a problem. Now, he legitimately had a problem with his system, would not have known it had he not done that. He had 2 battery banks and one bank was not functioning, but he'd never run it below 50%, so he didn't know that. So these are the type of things that you have to check and you have to run. So the question is, how often should I actually test the generator or the battery system? Test the generator twice a year. Test your battery system on an ongoing basis. Get something out of it. Don't only make it just a backup situation. Make it to where you're using it. If you don't have a choice but to use it as an emergency thing, then I would test it a couple of times a year also, and maybe make that 3 or 4 times a year. The beginning of the season, a couple of months into the season, a couple of months further along than that. Every few months would probably be a good way to do it. Next, I have solar panels, so why wouldn't I have power during an outage? This is a very, very easy thing to answer. 76% of all the homes in the United States of America have been installed with what we call a grid-tied system. They are wonderful for reducing your electric bill, but when the grid's gone, so is your solar panels. They all have an emergency shut-off system that basically turns them off when there's no grid. Now, it's not to punish you. It's not a fault of the panels. The panels are capable of producing energy and all of that. But because there is no grid for that power to go to, because there's no grid for that power to go to, and there may be a lineman out there trying to fix your electricity, the safety device is to shut it off to make it safe for people to work on it. And so without a battery to store that extra power, without a way to handle that extra power, they've cheapened the solar system to basically take that power and either use a microinverter at the panel to convert it to AC power, or to bring it down into an inverter and convert it to AC power and send it to the grid. There's no batteries, there's no switching, there's no nothing. They don't handle any of that. All they do is just take the power and either let you use it or send it back to the grid. And the grid becomes a quote unquote battery. When the battery's gone, so are all your panels. They all shut down. Everything's dead. So that's why, because 76% don't have it and don't realize they don't have it. A lot of the solar companies will bury this down in their contract, and it's not that they've lied, they've omitted these things because it makes it easier to sell the panels. I couldn't tell you how the number of people that I've interviewed and talked to that said, well, I thought I was going to have power when the electricity went out. And if you look deep in their contract, it does say that they won't have power. It does say you don't have a battery. It does say this. But who looks at page 26, paragraph 3, those two little lines, when you're buying a solar system and the high pressure salesmen are there and everything? So how often should you actually test it? Every couple of months. Why wouldn't I have power during an outage? Because 3 out of 4 people don't. All right, is it safe to run a generator in a garage, or does it have to be completely outside? No, not only does it need to be completely outside, it needs to be a long ways from your house, meaning 20, 30 feet. It needs to be very, very careful that the wind that is blowing past your generator isn't blowing that air back into your house or your neighbor's house. Now, let me be really clear about this. The gases that come out of those generators, and some of us can smell that little gas fumes and stuff like that, that's not the gas that kills you. The carbon monoxide is smellless. You will not know. You will just die, or you will fall asleep and never wake up. And so will your neighbors and stuff. You have to be very careful to only run the generators where the vents are facing, where they've got full ventilation. Run them as far away from the house as you can get them, as far away from your neighbor's house. If the wind is blowing in a direction that causes problems for someone, then you need to move it. Don't just let it go. Don't think, oh, this will be okay. I'll just shut my door and let it bounce off my windows and stuff like that. It'll get in through the vents in your attic. It'll get in through the cracks in your door. It is really, really bad. It's really dangerous, and the long-term effects are even more nightmarish than just falling asleep and not waking up. So please be super, super careful with this. And this is just not even close to putting it in your garage. Don't even put it near your house, and put it downwind. That is the safest way to deal with your generator, completely outside, completely downwind, and completely downwind from your neighbors too. Be nice to your neighbors also. What size extension cords do I actually need to safely run a refrigerator or other appliances? Okay, so when you buy an extension cord, most of them will tell you the amp rating that the cord can accept. Most extension cords can accept up to 13 amps, and 13 amps are the smallest ones. They're the cheaper ones that they sell. They probably sell cheaper ones because they can, but they shouldn't.
So if you're going to be running things on off in an emergency situation, and you, especially your refrigerator, you need to buy a nicer extension cord. Buy one that supports 15 amps or 20 amps. They're going to be labeled as 14 gauge or 12 gauge or even 10 gauge. The 14 gauge ones will support up to 15 amps. The 12 gauge ones will support up to 20 amps. The 10 gauge ones will support up to 20 amps. Or did I have that wrong? It'll say on the label. Make sure you get one that at minimum supports 15 amps and preferably the 20 amp one, especially if you're going to be running it for any long period of time like that. Short term, sure, you can run a light bulb or something like those little ones. We'd all do that. That's not a big deal. But extension cords are not made for long-term use. They're made for short-term emergency use, but don't burn your house down because of a hurricane because you want to run, your refrigerator and you don't have the right extension cord. Buy it ahead of time because you won't be able to get it the day before a hurricane. All right. How long will a battery system actually run my fridge, lights, and fans, and internet router? I'm going to tell you a lot of that depends on how big it is. Okay, so let's look at it this way. Most of your 48 volt, 100 amp hour batteries are 5.12 kilowatt hours of power. Most refrigerators take between 1.2 and 1.5 kilowatt hours a day to operate. So that means that you could safely run a refrigerator for a couple of days. Now, I say a couple of days, and many of you are going to say, but 1.2 divided by, or 5 divided by 1.2 is like 4 days. Yes, there is, but all the equipment that you need to actually generate the power and convert it from DC to put it into the refrigerator is going to consume something also. And so you won't get four full days out of it. You're going to get something shy of that. And that's why it's important that you test the system and understand how much power you're actually getting from those and which ones of those work. Now, I'm going to jump over here real quick and go through some of these questions before I forget. Let's see. Donald says people paid over $20 for portable gas cans during Hurricane Milton just for the container. Yeah, actually they're $20 all the time now, unfortunately. But yeah, they'll start screwing you, and there's nothing you can do but buy them. Buy them now. Buy them right now. The gas cans will last for years. 2, that would be 48 kilowatt hours of battery for me without a solar generator backup. Part of my backup plan, maybe number 11, is communication backup to my home network so I can evacuate. The Starlink will have power so I can shut down additional loads if necessary using my private VPN. Donald, sounds like you're coming up with a good plan. I said VPN even if you typed it wrong. You knew what you were saying. Also monitor all my devices and security cameras. I put out that video just the other day of that new camera that I had, and it wasn't the other day, it was probably a month or so ago. And it's actually working really well. It's got a little solar panel on the top and it charges a little battery. The damn thing works well. I was able to mount it out in the middle of the yard and it connects to the Wi-Fi. It's got a strong connection and seems to be working fine. To be honest with you, I'm kind of surprised. I didn't expect it to work that well. Now the question is how long will the battery last? Does it have one of those NiCad batteries that 6 months from now it dies, or does it have a lithium ion battery in it that will, last a couple of years? That's going to be the real question. I have reminders on my Google Calendar to remind me to test my generator once a month. In the off-season, hurricane season is twice a month, and one of them is a full load transfer test. Now that's a plan. That's a damn good plan right there. Carbon monoxide exposure is cumulative, so it can build up in your bloodstream, and some after effects are quite, yeah, they are. That is no joke. That is, just take my word for it. Don't look it up. It is ugly, and they're cumulative. That is the key there. They are cumulative, meaning now, next year, the year after that, the year after that, the more you continue to do things that are bad with carbon monoxide, the worse it gets. It's just not worth it. Don't take any chances at all. It really is, it is bad. Don't forget that new refrigerators have a defrost mode, which in my fridge is almost 400 watts. Yeah, isn't that crazy? What happened to defrost mode just being that it just stopped? I think what happened is they decided that the defrost mode was allowing things to thaw a little bit. So what they do is they pump it into defrost mode, which heats up everything and melts all the stuff, but the food inside still stays cold enough because it happens so quickly. And then they refreeze again and all the frost is gone, but the product itself never got to thaw out. Great in concept, but damn, it would be nice to have a little switch in the back to turn it off, wouldn't it? Yeah, I've seen that before, or I've heard of this a couple of times with people, which is why it's really important that if you're building a system like this, that you go in, you measure how much things are going to run, you run on it, you test it, you figure it out. Now, there's a bunch of different ways you can do that. My way is, I'm a little crazy though. I'll hook everything up and I'll actually do it for a couple of days and see what happens. But it would be nice once I get my. I'll be doing a video here in a few weeks on my soft start. Once I have my soft start, you're going to see me run my whole house again for a few days. I want to run that test for the whole hurricane backup system test. It'll be fun. Wi-Fi security cameras not good for security. No, they're not good for security. They're good for me to be able to monitor what's going on. But no, they're not good for that. But they do work. They do ping my phone every time somebody walks in my backyard. They do give me the visibility to know, hey, something's wrong out there. When they give me the ability to look in the shed and make sure that everything looks right. So, and they do it without me running any cables or wires out in the internet. Security, we could argue that. And the funny thing is that the ad that the app that they have, actually when you bring it up, it says unbreakable security. I'm like, yeah, whatever. All right, back to the questions. Where were we? We were all right. How long will the battery? There we go. All right, so how much fuel should I store at home so I don't get caught short in gasoline close to during the storm? This goes back to the question of how long do you need, how much power are you going to need from your thing? For me, it's charge my batteries all the way up 3 times. That's my key. I have 3 days of autonomy. I have 3 full charges of that 3 days of autonomy. So that means that you need to know how much gas it takes to give you a full charge, and then that's how much you need. I happen to know exactly how much that is. It's 4.5 5-gallon tanks. So I get 5 5-gallon tanks, which is 25 gallons, and I usually overdo it a little bit and end up with 35 or 40. But I already own the tank, so I figure what the heck. When I'm done at the end of the season, I dump it all in my wife's car and we burn it off until next year. So that's how much. You need enough to, in my mind, I need enough to charge those batteries 3 times. That buys me 4 3-day periods with absolutely no sun, no grid, no nothing. That's 12 solid days of autonomy. And I shouldn't need that. I should be able to at least get some sun out of that. If you figure I get 10% sun out of that, I get another couple days off of there. My 12 turns into 14. If I get 50% sun, then my 12 can turn into 18. So it just really depends. And then once you start getting above that, the numbers start to really, really multiply. All right. My appliances use most power, and which ones can I actually afford to run on a backup? What appliances use most power? Your hot water heater, your air conditioner, your stove, your oven. They all use power for a lot of power. Your dryer, they all use a lot of power and for long periods of time. So let's talk about all the different devices you can and can't get away with. Microwaves are actually wonderful devices. Do they use a lot of power? Yes, but it's usually relatively short. In other words, you need to make a hot meal and you have to cook something for 2 minutes. You're going to use 1500 watts for 2 minutes. Boom, you have a hot meal. During a hurricane, that can be very, very good. You're going to run a load of laundry in your dryer. It may use 4,000 watts for 45 minutes. That's not good. You can hang your clothes on a clothesline and wash your clothes with the wash machine is actually relatively low power usage. So you can still have clean laundry and just hang dry your laundry. Now, the question is do you have a way to hang dry your laundry? And most of us could string up a string between two posts and come up with something there. So the question comes down to what appliances use the most power? Your dryer and your hot water heater is the second one. Your air conditioner is your third one. All three of which you can live without. Now, if you have enough power, some of them are enormously convenient to have. For example, having your air conditioner is kind of nice to have. So planning on maybe have a split, a small window unit, a very efficient window unit in one room, or have a mini split in one room that you can use during a situation like that so that you can stay. Like we have a window unit in the master bedroom. That would be the one that we would use if there was a hurricane, and we would just turn off the house unless, of course, the solar system that I'm building and running has enough power. Then I would run the whole house on it and run the whole house air conditioner. But it's not absolutely necessary. Hot water heater. A hot water heater, I would just shut it off immediately. Shut it off immediately because you don't really need it. You don't need it except in extreme cases after 3, 4, 5 days, it starts to get to the point where you do have a hygiene issue. You may actually have to, in order to survive. Now, this is where wives, significant others, the one not building the system says, no, hot water isn't an option. I have to have a shower every day. There is a difference between survival and having a hot shower every day. You do not have to have a hot shower every day in order to live. Now, if you have the power, is it nice? Yes, absolutely. Of course it's nice. But I'm telling you, after a couple of weeks of no power, and when the power runs out one time and they have no hot food, they have no hot bath, they have no gas, they have no lights, they have no air conditioner, they're going to learn what the difference is between necessary and convenience. And that's where you have to really stop and draw the line early and understand how much do I have to last how long. And back to the original question, which was what appliances use the most power? Another one is your stove. Use your barbecue grill. Make sure you have enough propane gas to run barbecue. 1 tank of propane gas, and if you have a generator that uses propane gas, you could have 5 or 6 propane tanks, and you could run the generator on 4 or 5 of them and use a tiny bit for cooking. It doesn't take much to cook on a propane tank. All right, moving on. How do I keep my phone charged if the power stays out for several days? A very small solar system can keep a phone charged. If you're all you're worried about is a refrigerator and a phone, all you need is, a couple of 4 to 800 watts of solar power. 5 or 6. I use 3 kilowatt hour battery to run my DIY. Keep your refrigerator running. I think I even have a link for you guys on that one. Let's just see real quick. Yeah, here it is. And this plan here calls for a battery. It comes with a complete part list and everything on there. It'll give you a good way to run for about $1,500. Keep a refrigerator running, keep your cell phones charged up, keep all that kind of basic stuff. It's, almost 3 kilowatt hours. It's a 24 volt system, so it's nice and in low amperage, very safe to operate even in a bad storm like that, and easy to keep up. And if you order the online class that goes with it, it gives you an exact parts list you can order over Amazon. Every part you need to do. I'll just leave that up for a second while I go back to this list. So we were on
This one here. How do I keep my phone charged if the power stays out? So that's the answer to that. And then how do I get weather alerts if the internet goes down and the cell phones get spotty? And that's exactly what's going to happen. Internet's going to go down. The cell phones are going to get spotty. Things are going to get kind of ugly for you. One of those emergency radios is your best thing. An FM, AM, FM radio that is, that you can charge up and plug into like a USB port or something, because those are easy to run off of your batteries. Your solar system can run the little USB items for days and days and charge for months and months on those big batteries. So those are really easy to maintain. And last question here. Nope, there is one more. No, one more, two more. The lighting, what lighting should I have ready before a storm hits so I'm not scrambling in the dark? Well, this is going to depend on you. I mean, a lot of people can have a simple flashlight, a couple of key flashlights in key areas that are, that stay charged up. I've got a couple that I use all the time in the solar shed, but I use them because I'm constantly, resetting things, turning off the power, testing things and that kind of stuff. So come up with some flashlights, and then when you come up with your plan of what's critical and what's not. Lights, low voltage devices, LED lights, and charging cell phones, and even sometimes even operating, cable modems and a satellite dish for like your Starlink, and all these are low power items that you can get away with very easily. And you can maintain them pretty quickly and easily, and charge them pretty easily also. How do I keep my house from becoming dangerously hot without air conditioning? Well, this one can be very easily solved with a couple of fans. There are a couple of high efficiency fans that you can do. And if you set up a wind tunnel where the air comes in one side of your house and out the other, you can do it that way. You can also focus on, like I said, having just one place in your house that you can keep cool, that you can manage. It may be easy to manage. You may easily have enough power to run like a mini split in one room, and just keep that room as, your safe room where you can go, and it doesn't have to be, 65 degrees in there, but you could, set it at 78, and a mini split could keep a room at 78. Fairly easily. They're well insulated. It's part of your house, so you're not gonna, it's not like you don't have insulation in the attic and in the walls and stuff like that. And then you could use that as a place to go to for refuge when it gets too hot in the rest of the house and that kind of stuff. So a lot of the times it's just going to be good preparedness. They also sell, attic fans that pull the air out of the house and suck it up into the thing. But those are kind of more permanent changes to your lifestyle. If you're like me, I live in Florida. My air conditioner's on 365 days a year. I think I ran my heater more this year than ever did before, and I probably ran it a total of about 12 hours total for the whole year. So how do I keep my house from being a couple of fans, maybe you air condition in one room? It just depends on how big your system is. What cables, adapters, accessories do I need or have before the power goes out? The same ones you have now. You just need to make sure that you have them readily accessible to plug into the devices you have now. So for example, if you don't have AC power, because you're not going to have an inverter on, or a lot of times, a lot of people have solar systems and they run LED lights off of DC power, and they don't want to hook up an inverter because they don't want to pay for the inverter's idle consumption cost. And if this is the case, then you need to make sure that you have, like in an RV, they have devices that go from 12 volts to 5 volts, and you get USB plugs. You can get them easily to go from either 12 volt batteries or 48 volt batteries to USB plugs. So that way you have that adapter done. But don't wait to use it until you have a hurricane. Hook it up now. Get it working. Understand what it's going to take to charge it. Understand what it's going to take to operate it and how it's going to function. And understand how it's going to take to get it into a place where it's useful. It doesn't do you any good to have a solar system you can hook up and run your refrigerator, but that you can't connect the panels because the panels need to be 40 feet away and you only got 10 feet of cord. Hook the system up.
actually run your refrigerator on it for a day or so. Understand what the problems are going to be and where you're going to end up with issues. The best way to manage backup power so that it lasts as long as possible during an outage. The best thing that you can do is sit down and be very honest with yourself and ask yourself on every single device, do I need this to survive? Do I need this for comfort? Or can I live without this completely? And you're going to find out that do I need this for comfort and do I need this to survive are two different lists depending on who you're talking to. A lot of people consider things like an air conditioner and hot water things that I have to survive. And I can tell you that ain't true. What you need to survive is food, water, those two things, and medical attention if you've got something bad happen, if you've got a cut or a wound or something like that. You need to be able to get it clean. You need to be able to get it bandaged. You need to be able to take care of it. You need to be able to those are the type of things you need to survive. You need to be able to feed yourself. Drinking water is really super critical. If your only source of water is your well and you have no way to power your well, where are you going to get your drinking water? So you may need a solar system to run your well. You may need to have a backup supply of water. You may need to have a backup supply of food. And if you've got food, then you're going to need to be able to keep it cold. You're going to be able to need to keep it frozen. And if you're going to need to be keeping it frozen and that's going to be running off of a battery, that's wonderful. But then you either need solar or a generator or something to be able to charge that. Do you have enough fuel for that? So you need to think all of these processes through from beginning to end and then implement them in practicality and really actually do it and see what the problems are. I'm not saying you have to lump it and rough it for 3, 4, 5, 6 days on a generator. But at least turn it on. At least connect it and say, what problems did I have? What can I fix? Can I order an extra 10-foot cord so that my solar panels reach the actual place they need? Or am I going to have to disconnect my refrigerator, run my solar system out the back door, plug it in during the day while my refrigerator's off, and then at night run it back into the house and plug it back in? Can my refrigerator last all day without being plugged in? These are the kind of things that are just, they'll drive you crazy when things go wrong. And you're going to have more important things to worry about than is my cord long enough? Can my extension cord do this without causing a fire, getting hot? Is it safe? Or am my kids going to be running around all these electrical wires through the middle of my house? Is it going to cause harm or possible damage to them? Keep in mind, when the power goes out, they're not going to school. They're not leaving. They're going to be right there, and they're all going to be wound up, and they're going to be scared. And that's the last thing you need to be worrying about is, well, is this cord dangerous? You need to know that it's not dangerous before you get there. You need to plan it out, think about it, and figure out what do you need to take care of your wife, your kids, yourself, your grandparents, your uncle, your aunt, your next door neighbor, whoever it happens to be. What do you need? And you need to plan it out now before it happens. Where am I at? What is the best way to manage backup power so it lasts as long as possible during an outage? The plan, that's the plan. The plan and actual implementation. That's the solution there. Oh, I do have 3 more. Okay. Do you have enough water, food, or medical to stay home for several days without leaving? And the question is not do you have enough to stay home for several days? Do you have enough to stay home longer than the catastrophe happens? Think of it this way. A hurricane hits, everything floods. Now, I live about 10 miles inland right here where I am today. When I'm in my RV or if we're down on a beach or something and I've been where, the hurricane waters are up 3 feet and you look out the door and there's nothing but water all the way around you. But here in the house, it would be very, very difficult for it to make the water levels to rise high enough for it to be a problem here. But it could rise enough to where all the runoffs are pushed inland The storm surge is pushed up. They're all at maximum levels. I can't get out. A lot of the roads are flooded out, and I can't go out and I can't get fresh water. So then the question becomes is, where are you going to get food and water, and what are you going to cook them with, keep them cold with, and make sure that they're safe to eat and consume? That's really what you've got to think about. These are the type of things that'll make you nuts. And then there's comfort items that follow that. A lot of us have gotten used to, I'll be the first one to say, a lot of my system's oversized because, by God, I'm going to have air conditioning when I sleep. May even have it during the day. Do I have to have it to survive? No, but doggone it, why not? And I'll use the extra power the rest of the year to run BitMiner. I mean, right now the BitMiner's running. It's been running for the last 2 hours, and I'm still at 87% power, and it will run until tomorrow morning, probably at 9 a.m. when it shuts off and then lets the heat of the day charge the batteries again. But you know, it's charging up 48 kilowatt hours a day, and it's burning off as much as it has to have enough room to store everything else. Do we all need 48 kilowatt hours a day? No, probably not. But I do, so I can have an air conditioner. All right, how do I make sure everyone in my house knows how to use the backup power system if I am not at home? Well, that is the real trick. It needs to be safe enough to where you can have people safely operate it. That's why there are things like we talked about earlier with number 4 on the 10 hurricane prep mistakes. Well, number 4 was no safety transfer switch or interlock. An interlock will prevent the exact mistake that this item brings up. They won't be able to turn on the generator and leave it off, hook up the system. One of the things I'm doing is building a backup solar system to plug in like a generator as opposed to having a generator. But they won't be able to plug it in and use it with the interlock in place unless they properly switch the interlock. So being able to have that in place, or have the automatic transfer switch in place, or have a transfer switch, prevents these type of things from not working correctly or from people doing them wrong. That's their intended purpose. The interlock basically says the main breaker to the grid has to be off in order for the breaker for the backfeeding of a generator or for a solar system backup to feed in. Or this has to be off for that to be on. And they both can't be on at the same time, and it prevents them from misusing that. So that would be one way to do it, is to have all the devices hooked up in the right play. But each one of them, and then being able to get the generator and get it to start, and understanding how to plug it in, or being able to plug in the solar system, or have the automatic transfer switch take care of it, or have the monitoring tools where they can get it. All of these things are things that you're going to have to show someone and be able to make it simple enough for someone who's not in the DIY business to be able to plug them in and use them. And you've heard me say it. If I've said it once, I've said it a dozen times. And for those of you that are still here, you get to hear it again. But just because we're DIY does not mean that we're allowed to be sloppy and dangerous. Being hazardous to people's health, hooking up electrical systems that aren't safe, using cords that aren't the right size, leaving things connected where people can get hurt. It's still no excuse. Doing DIY doesn't mean, just because you can hammer hands and nails doesn't mean you get to build a building that's going to fall down on people. And just because you can DIY your electrical system doesn't mean that you get to do one where people can kill themselves and electrocute themselves. Follow the rules. Be careful, understand what you're doing, or call an electrician. That's what they're here for. That's why they go to school. That's why they learn. Make sure everyone in the house knows how to use it. That is the trick. Following a lot of these rules and putting a lot of these safety features in place according to code will ensure that even if they don't know what they're doing, that they can't hurt themselves doing it, or that they can't hurt themselves without some extreme effort. Last question. When is the right time to buy a backup power system, before the storm season or after the storm season is announced? Well, I honestly, I don't know. I'm going to assume that after the storm season, they're going to clearance the items that they have there. But if the storm season just started, which it did, and you don't have one, then my guess would be right now is the best time to buy one. Because if you wait till you need it, it's too late. You won't find any anywhere. They will be completely sold out. Every generator in the half of the state of Florida will be gone as soon as they announce a hurricane. It happens every year. And then every year after hurricane season, everybody puts them on Facebook and Craigslist and everywhere else selling them off. So you might even be able to go out and find a used one right now at a really good deal for somebody who bought one last year and under the gun and then decided to buy a new one this year because they wanted a bigger one or a better one. So that's that. Now let's go back over here. Hackers and jammers, and I think you're referring to Wi-Fi security cameras are not good for security. Yes, you're absolutely right. They're not. They're not as secure as the wired ones, but they're not there for a security camera. Isn't there for security in my mind. The security camera is there for me to have the ability to look around and make sure that everything's all right. So let's call it an awareness camera if you want. Anything 220 volts are the villains. Not sure what that means. Donald? And something to consider is an induction hot plate. Just make sure your cookware is induction compatible, i.e. magnets will stick to the bottom of the pan. Oh, you know what? This is a fantastic idea. I'm going to be looking at these for my RV. I want to get one of these in my RV because the problem you have with the gas ones in the RV is the cool part is they're gas, but the burners are small and everything. And I hear these induction ones will really heat things up fast. And my wife likes to cook in there, and we've got solar in the RV, so I might as well use the electrical aspect of it. I don't know much about them, but I've heard this is really good. That's cool. All right. I think that's it for the night, guys. I went through all the questions that I had. We did do all of the top 10 items, which real briefly was number 1, thinking solar panels means you have backup power when 76% of the country has a solar system installed that does not work when the grid goes out. No battery backup. If you have no place to store the power when it's generated, then when the power goes out, there is no stored energy. So unless you have a grid, you're not going to have power other than the power you're generating right then and there. And it's very few systems that allow you to use that power as it's generated. No critical loads panel. This allows you to pull off those loads that are critical so that in an emergency situation, you can only run the ones that you want. Not having any plan for those critical loads and not thinking about it and understanding how that works and what you would and wouldn't run is number 3 on the list. Number 4 is no safety transfer switch or interlock. This prevents a lot of mistakes backfeeding to the grid, causing your generator to get shorted out when the lineman starts to work on things. The first thing they're going to do is ground that line. And if you don't have that transfer switch and you are hooked up to the grid, the first thing you're going to do is short your generator out for you. Relying too much on the extension cords or extension cords that are too long or too small, make sure that you keep in mind that most extension cords only support 11.5 to 13 amps. And if you are using one of those that support the small amperage like that, the cord will burn out before the breaker will pop. It will melt and short out, and that's what will break the pop the breaker, not the fact that you overloaded the device. You'll plug in too much and the cord will melt. That's what will happen. Not testing the system before the storm hits. I tell you a numerous number of people, they have these systems, they've still got them sitting in a box. Talk to dozens of people every month that tell me this exact same story. Oh yes, I bought that system or this system and it's still sitting in a box in my garage and I never got to use it. And when you need it, it won't work.
because you never actually tested it and you have no idea what you're doing. And then you'll learn that you needed to charge it, or you needed an adapter, or you needed a plug, or you needed an extension cord, or you need a blah, 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 blah. No generator fuel plan. Generators are a wonderful thing, but they require gas, and they require diesel, and they require propane, and they require natural gas, and they require to be powered also. And without a plan to understand what that's going to take and how much of it you need, chances are you're not going to have what you need when the time comes. That takes you back to number 7, which was, or not number 6, which was not testing your plan to make sure it works. I take my generator every year, pull in, charge my batteries up, figure out how much it is, make sure that I understand what the difference is, and how much I'm going to need. Number 8 was forgetting the internet and communications. In other words, not having a way to keep your internet online, to keep your phones charged, to keep your radios on, your cameras on, your weather updates, having a backup emergency radio. One of the old traditional antennas for your TV is usually pretty convenient also. Those type of things allow. Cell phone towers, that kind of stuff, they're all going to go down. Chances are they're all going to go down. If you're a ham operator, you'll shine because you'll be able to communicate and stuff like that. I keep a Starlink system for when I travel, but I use my Starlink system when hurricanes are on the way. First thing I do is pull it inside, make sure it's in a good, safe place. No spare parts, fuses, breakers, cables, MC4 connectors, those type of things. It's a shame that a $10, $20, $30,000 solar system and all the prep work in the world can all go to hell in a handbasket as soon as your T-class fuse goes pop and you don't have a replacement. And now you're stuck in a hurricane and you're out for 10 days and there is no Amazon to deliver you a new one. And then last but not least, the procrastinators of the world, waiting until the last moment, and then there is nothing you can do about it because there's no way you can get it here in time. There's no way you can test it in time. There's no way you can verify that it's going to do what you want. And you simply have set yourself up to fail. And then when the hurricane is over and you want to go back and do this, your wife says, well, that don't work. We already tried it. Or whatever the case may be, then you're setting yourself up for failure. Start now, test it now, give it a trial, make sure it works, and hopefully this helps. I hope everybody had a wonderful Monday. Those were high load items. Donald says, good night. You can get a decent induction hot plate for well under $100 now. It has been using in my primary cooking source for over 10 years and most efficient way to extra electrons for cooking. Yeah, I want to try replacing my oven and stovetop, or at least the stovetop in my RV. I want to get rid of the gas cooking stovetop and put the induction one in. The nice thing is then the stove top, as I understand it, is actually just a flat top, and I can just put things on it, and I don't have to worry about it being hot and all that stuff or accidentally doing it. I hear it's the right way to go. I don't know a whole lot about it yet, but I'm definitely going to look into it. Hopefully that'll pan out. I don't know when I'm going to get to that, but hopefully here. Got something on my lip. Hopefully I'll get to that here sometime soon. And let's see what we got here for this week's. This week we are sitting at 23,696 subscribers. Thank you so much, subscribers. And the members, I know there was a ton of new members in the last month. The only real benefit you get is you get to see all my videos early. I release them, and when I do get them as soon as I get them done, I always release them early. So no matter how many I have, sometimes I have a dozen outstanding videos. Sometimes I have 1 or 2. This last couple of weeks, it's only been 1 or 2. But I feel a few of them getting close to completion, so they should start popping out here. Next 4 or 5 videos are all going to be about the same thing. Different things about, running backup generators, about backup systems, about whole house systems, about battery systems, everything that there is to do with dealing with hurricanes and backup systems. That's what we're going to be doing. So to all 23,696 of my subscribers, thank you so much. For all of the viewers, thank you so much. And for all the members, thank you so much. You guys make this all worthwhile, and you make it, it's a thrill to be here having all of you here each week. Gotta love when I get to project. Yeah, me too. I'll get to it eventually. Longer and longer. Yeah, I'm gonna have to retire just so I can have time to get all the stuff done. I thought about it. I recently switched jobs, and I thought about when I left my last position to just not get a new position, but I decided to go ahead and do it anyway. So, all right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for coming this week. And hopefully you have gotten something from my top 10 hurricane mistakes. And if you need anything, leave comments, suggestions, feedback, good and bad, is welcome in the comments below. I welcome it either way. I don't promise that I will, yeah. Yeah, ain't that the right? I get it. Jake, you are more than welcome. Thank you for showing up. Thanks for being here. Thanks everybody for being here. You guys, let's see. You know, I say they have this really cool thing here. Here we go. A little bit of music for the going away party here. You guys, thank you so much. Have a great week. Have a wonderful week. We will see you next Monday. Between now and then, I'm hoping to have a couple of new videos out. So, talk to you then. Thanks for watching. Thanks for coming. Good night.